From WBRN Radio and on the Bostonred Network, the Numbers Man side. This week in economics on the 3rd of November 2019. Numbers Man here, another week in the sphere, realm, or whatever you want to call it, the science of economics as it applies to the global economy and particular the U.S. economy. We have a lot of numbers here. We'll look at the numbers and particularly the job numbers and the, I don't know if we have the housing numbers here or not, but housing was generally up about, 1.3%, I believe, according to the Schindler Index. Don't have the Schindler Index here, but it is moving along. And many things in the economy, and we'll get to some analysis from various analysts, economists, and whomever, their take on what the economy was going to produce. Now, this was basically for Q3, and we have the domestic product here, the advanced estimate. One thing to remember, these are always subject to revision, and in the September and August jobs numbers, that's another part of it, they can always be revised, and they were revised. Now, one of the thing to note here, it heard from a number of broadcasts talking about the GM strike, General Motors workers there. There were roughly about 50,000 of them officially out, and roughly 68,000 that were affiliated in different industries that were out. Now, those people were counted as unemployed, being made redundant. Now, the GM workers were not, because they did not receive unemployment benefits. They were out. They received strike benefits from $200 a week from their trade unions. It was the longest strike since the 70s for GM, and it was settled. And also now we have a tentative settlement with Ford Motor Company. That settlement also, and the Chicago teachers, another big strike, they are back to work on a tentative settlement there. So students are back. Over 300,000 students were out, and I believe about 25,000 teachers involved there. But there are smaller strikes out there also. So when we start painting a picture, we have to look at it in the broader context. And on the international sphere, Brexit, the Prime Minister there, Johnson, has finally admitted that he will leave the EU. They've been incidentally granted till the 31st of January, and they probably will be granted another extension. They'll not leave with a no-leave Brexit. He calls snap elections, which will be, I believe, on December the 12th in the United Kingdom. And some observers say, in spite of where the polls are, and we'll have more on that on the political side, a Bostonred, that it could be a hung parliament. We do, in fact, model that particular election in the UK, so we'll have more on that as we get to it there. And we have the Monday morning quarterback that is on our political side out there, and we also have a that's our climate change special, but we do have a letter there from Patty Davis about the wildfires in California. Now, that does play into the economic sphere. We don't have those numbers yet, but in New Delhi, they are under a severe, and I mention that again, severe climate alert there, fog in the city, to the point that cars are on an odd even number that are allowed into Delhi, and at the same time flights have problems, workers have problems getting to work, transport. So generally disruptive situation caused by climate. The same situation in both the north and the south of California. Now, some of those fires are caused by defects in the power grid, but also the lack of moisture normally in California. As Patty Davis points out, incidentally, she's the daughter of former president, late President Ronald Reagan. Pointed out that they always had wildfires when she was growing up there in California, and her parents, of course, had a ranch there, and her father showed her where things were burnt down. In fact, her school was burnt to the ground there in the Los Angeles area. But because of the very dry conditions, they've had to have roving power outages caused by the power companies. Now, if you recall, in Venezuela, they had problems with the grid that were sabotaged there, and there was a great amount of publicity about it. But there's less about the inner structure here in North America. Let's get to domestic product, and we also have our friends in Tempe, the supply chain people. They are talking about manufacturing and other things. So we'll get to them, and we also have several others here, so we'll get to those very quickly here. The domestic product that was released on the 31st of GDP of October, it increased at an annual rate of 1.9% in Q3. This is the advanced estimate released there. And in the second quarter, increased at 2%. The estimate released today is based on better data sources. That does happen. And just a second here as we get our pointing here. Current dollar GDP increased by 3.5%, or $185.6 billion in Q3. To a level of $21.53 trillion. Now remember, at one time the U.S. economy was pegged at 15 trillion, 18 trillion, and now it's $21 trillion. In Q2, GDP increased 4.7%, or $241.4 billion. The index for gross domestic purchases increased at 1.4% in Q3, compared with an increase of 2.2% in Q2. The PCE price index increased by 1.5%, compared with 2.4%. Excluding food and energy, PCE price index increased at 2.2, compared with 1.1. A little bit of inflation involved there. Current dollar personal income increased at $172.8 billion in Q3, compared with $244.2 billion in Q2. Deceleration reflects a downturn in personal income receipt on assets, decelerations on compensation, and in personal current transfer receipts. They were offset by acceleration in proprietors' income. Disposable personal income, something we watch very closely, increased to $181.7 billion, or 4.5% in Q3, compared with $192.6 billion, or 4.8% in Q2. Real disposable personal income increased by 2.9%. compared with Q2. This is Q3. Personal savings at 1.34 trillion in the third quarter, compared with 1.32 trillion. That's 0.2 trillion more in the second quarter. Personal savings rate. Personal savings as a percentage of disposable income was 8.1% in Q3, as compared with 8% in Q1. A little bit more personal savings rate up. That is always good for any economy period. Now we look at, these are the dates. Sorry about that. That will be out. The advanced estimate on gross domestic product will be out on the 30th of January 2020. And for Q1 will be on April 29th, 2020. Won't get into that very much. That's just a schedule of what will be going on there. And let me see if I need to deep dive any more into this. Sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. Let me just get this up a little bit here. A little bit of a deep dive, not much of a deep dive. Gross domestic product, that's GDP, personal on goods. If we go back to 2016, it's 3.6. 2008, 4.1 was it. These are seasonally adjusted. This is just on goods. Q3 on just goods. Let me see what we have here. 2.9 Q2. This is of 2019. We had 4.6, and Q1 we had 1.1 for there. So this was general goods. Durable goods we gave. We'll finish up here. Durable goods and in the Q3 at 5.5, Q2 was 8.6 as of 2019. Q4 was 1.3 as durable goods. And fixed investment in Q3 it was negative 1.3 tenths. Non-residential investment a negative 3 point there. Structure negative. This is of this year. Equipment at a negative 3.8. Intellectual property products 6.6, and residential again that's the proprietors at 5.1. It was a negative 3 point Q2 and a negative. So slight improvement there. That's on residential. We'll look at government expenditures here. Federal government 3.4 in Q4 and 8.3 in Q2 of this year. National defense at 2.2 and it was 3.3 in Q2. That's of this year. Non-defense Q2 was at 16.1 and it was 5.2. State and local governments at 1.10% in Q3 and it was 2.7 there. So it's a little idea of where we are going here. Gross domestic income, what do we have? 1.8. Yeah, 1.8. That would have been in Q2. And the average of the two, 1.9, basically the same. Final sales domestic product at 2%. Final sales to domestic purchases at 1.9%. Gross national product, GN 2.8. Disposable personal income at 2.9. So in terms of measurement, GDP at 3.5. GDI at 4.5 there. Gross domestic purchases 3.7. Final sales to domestic purchases at 3.3. Final sales to private domestic at 3.4. And contributions to percentage change in real domestic product, real gross domestic product. We look at these 1.9. That's in Q3 of this year. Percentage at annual rate of 1.93 and goods at 1.14. So we'll leave it at that. And if we go to income, personal income and outlays, this is for September. This is released on the 31st of October. And if we look at personal income, current dollars, that is 0.3%. In September, it was 0.5% in August. Disposable income at virtually no movement in September there in PCE, and increase in personal income in September primarily reflects increase in personal interest income from farm proprietors' income and government social benefits to persons. The adjusted September wage and salaries downward by 1.9 billion to account for the automotive United Auto Workers work stoppage that started on the 16th. So we're seeing it come in. Necessary because of the source data used to evaluate wages and salaries. Foreign proprietors' income at 23.3 billion in August and 21.1 billion in September. Payments associated with the Department of Agriculture were substantial contributors to both as the market facilitation program. The 22.8 billion increase in PC in September reflects an increase of 18.4 billion in spending for goods and 6.5 billion increased spending for services. Within goods, new motor vehicles was the leading contributor to the increase. Within services, the largest contributor was spending for health care. Personal outlays increased by 23 billion in September. Personal savings was 1.38 trillion in September. Personal savings rate as a percentage of disposable income was 8.3. I believe we gave that before. And changes from preceding months. And we have August here, revised to 0.5%. Their disposable personal income in current dollars at 0.6%. That was the revision, and it previously was at 0.5%. So you kind of see the difference here in the revision. And usually we look for the revision to see where we are, and that will do it for that part of it. And we'll just mosey along here, as one will say, through this, and see where we are here. We will have a special, incidentally, on Medicare for All. That's Elizabeth Warren's plan, and there's a lot of information out there on that, and we'll have to, as they say, dig a little bit deeper into where it is there. Basically, summing it up, the private health care, 150 million private insurance health care plans, while levying more than 15 trillion in new taxes on business and the rich. So that is some of the plan outline here, and that's going to vary a little bit. There'll be a lot of criticism out there. The average American household spends $5,000 on personal health. About 30 million Americans currently have no insurance at all, out of 300 plus million people. And again, that's so we don't know. Anyway, the Urban Institute there, 34 trillion over decade being 10 years. Several European countries with single-payer systems have formed cost savings that require patients to spend their own money while going to the doctor. In other words, it depends obviously on how this turns out, and it hasn't turned out yet. The Urban Institute said the federal government needs 34 trillion to pay for Medicare for All. These estimates will warn you out of it because, again, this is a 4-year program but would take effect. Warren says the cost restraints would kick about 3 trillion off the plan's overall tax cuts. So we won't really spend any time on this one. One of those things that we're going to have spend some time deep diving into. We'll start some general summaries here, and we'll get into some of the specifics, including the people in Tempe, Arizona. We will get into. I think we're throwing this as we start to transition here back to some more hard numbers. Microsoft's in Japan, they have a 4-day work week. 4-day work weeks have been experienced as experiments, I should say. Get out in a minute here. Anyway, this is by Chris, 40% rise in productivity. No doubt many of these tech giants recorded more than a 40% rise in productivity after cutting its work hours as a part of a wider project to promote healthier work-life balance. So that is the old flex time situation. Work-life choice challenges held Solid Firm, close its door on Fridays and give its 2,300 workers a 3-day weekend. So over that period, the firm saw, as measured by sales per worker, 39.9% rise in August. So it is a little bit different here. Overall, the measurement was 39.9, while the firm saw a fall in costs of 23.1 less electricity used and 58.7 fewer pages printed over that period. That's about the old maximum of Karl Marx with the worker. It doesn't matter once the worker is in the plant or in the workplace. He could work 8 hours or 15 hours. The cost diminishes to the boss. So in this particular situation, if they can put the work week at 4 instead of 5, they would have tremendous savings with that. That's been around for a very long time. The notion of 4-day working has been gaining traction as advocates highlight its possible benefits, reduce stress, preventing overwork. That's according to a New Zealand firm of trials. The impact of overwork are felt acutely in Japan, where there are a lot of, we used to say, eager beavers around. According to 2016 government study, almost a quarter of Japanese companies require workers to work more than 80 hours. That's sort of like what used to be in Detroit in production plants. It was mandatory 60 hours a week, not 80 in production. Anyway, let's move along here. We're still with CNBC before we go to some of the hard data here. Move along here. Mickey D's of McDonald's has ousted their CEO there, so we do have some information here. We don't have the Russell. Well, anyway, can't have everything. Now let me go to some hard numbers here, and we'll come back to some of the CNBC numbers in a minute here, and we'll go to the people in Tempe. This is the employment summary for October from our friends at the Bureau of Economic Analysis. Non-farm payroll rose 128,000 in October, and the unemployment rate was a little changed, 3.6. Notable job gains occurred in food services, drinking places, social assistance, and financial activities, while manufacturing employment in motor vehicles and parts decreased due to the strike. We talked about it a little bit there. Federal government employment was down, reflecting a drop in the number of temporary jobs from the 2020 census. That's interesting, already laying off before they get started. Anyway, the non-farm employment rose by 128 in 28,000 October. The unemployment rate, we already got this. Sorry about this. This release presents statistics from the 2-month survey. The household survey measures current workforce status, including unemployment and demographics. Let's first go to the household survey here. The official rate of unemployment and redundancies, depending on where you live, was 3.6. The number of unemployed persons at 5.9 million, little changed in October. Amongst the major groups, the unemployment rate for adult men, 3.2. Adult women, same at 3.2. Teenagers at 1.3%. For Europeans at 3.2%. African Americans, the low rate here at 5.4%. Asians, 2.9%. And Latinos at 4.1%, showed little change in October. The long-term unemployment, those jobless for a half year, 27 weeks, are more essentially unchanged at 1.3 million in October, accounted for 21.5% of those that were redundant. The workforce participation rate was little changed at 63.3% in October. The unemployment population ratio held at 61%. Both numbers were up by 0.4 over the year, 12-month period. Number of persons employed part-time at 4.4 million. In October, 1.2 million persons were marginally attached to the labor force, down by 262,000 from a year earlier. Amongst the marginally attached, There were 341,000 discouraged workers in October, down by 165,000 from a year earlier. Data is not seasonally attached there. The remaining 888,000 people marginally attached to the labor force had not searched for work. We'll call that 1 million. The establishment survey, the 128,000 October job growth had averaged 167,000 per month thus far in 2019, compared with an average of 223,000 in 2018. In October, notable job gains occurred in food service, drinking places, social assistance, and social assistance, financial activities, declines in motor vehicle part manufacturing due to strikes, and layoffs at the Census Bureau. Food services, drinking places added 48,000 jobs. That's a lot. Job growth in the industry has averaged 38,000 over the past 3 months, compared with an average gain of 16,000 in the first 7 months. So getting to the holiday seasons, I guess more people are going out. In October, employment and financial activities rose by 16,000, with gains in real estate rentals and leasing, in credit intermediation and related activities 6,000. Financial activities added 108,000 jobs. That was over a 12-month period. Employment and professional business services continued to trend up, 22,000. The industry has added an average of 33,000 jobs per month thus far in 2019, compared with gains of 47,000 per month in 2018. Yeah, roughly 10,000 more there in professional and business services. Healthcare continues an upward trend in October, 15,000 jobs added there. Healthcare has added 402,000 jobs in this year over 12 months. Manufacturing decreased by 36,000 in October. Within manufacturing, motor vehicles parts declined by 42,000, reflecting the strike. Federal government workers were down 17,000 over the month, as compared with 20,000 temporary workers who had been preparing for the census completed their work. Employment in other major industries, including mining, construction, wholesale, etc., showed little change. In October, the average hourly earnings for all workers rose by 6 cents to $28.18. Over the past 12 months, in October, the average monthly earning in the private sector by 4 cents, $23.70. The average work week was 34.4 hours. In manufacturing, the average work week decreased by 2/10 to 40 hours and 3/10. The change in total non-farm employment for August was revised up by 51,000 from 168,000 to 219,000. Changes in February were revised up by 44,000 from 136,000 to 180,000. The employment gains combined were 95,000 than previously reported monthly revisions from business and government agencies. The last published there, after revision, job gains averaged 176,000. That is not bad. It's nothing to jump about either. So let's move along here. And I think this may be the same one, but in a different format. And we'll go on to the employment situation. To our friends in Tempe, Arizona. Looking at my time here, not bad. Manufacturing index in October. This is from CNBC. I'll go with their points, and then I'll go to our friends in Tempe. Manufacturing purchase index for the Institute for Supply Management came in at 48.3 last month, compared with 47.3 in September. It was below expectations at 49.1. Well, a number below 50, there's some problems there. The sector showed its first contraction in August, ending a 35-month expansion period when it averaged, 56.5%. A gauge showed the sector continues to contrast in October. The manufacturing purchase index from the supply management people came in at 48.3 last month, compared with a reading of 47.8 in September. Is below the expectation of 49.1. 6-week GM strike might have muddled the reading. I'm not certain about that. When the PMI averaged, 30 at 56.5%, manufacturing gauge is lowest reading since the beginning of the Depression in June of 2009. That's not a very good sign right there. Comments from panelists reflected improvements from the prior month, but sentiments remain more cautious and optimistic. That is from Timothy Flore. He's the chair of the Manufacturing Survey Committee. The production index was at 46.2 in October, compared with a 47.3. Backlog of work was at 44.1. Sixth straight month there. So in other words, manufacturing is in a recession, whether they want to call it that or not. Input expressed as supplies, deliveries, inventories were again lower in October, due primarily to supplier contraction offset by improvements in inventory. The latest report showed signs of recovery, making some Wall Street types believe manufacturing slowdown won't be accelerated. Well, that is very difficult to say there. I think a lot of this has been muddled by more than optimistic readings here. Let's go on to the supply index itself. And this will be our last so-called hard index on this report, and then we'll have, this is Christina Cahill. She's a business analyst there. On the 1st of November, and the headline here: new orders, production, employment contrasting. Suppliers deliver fast from a slower backlog there. In other words, economic activity in the manufacturing sector contracted in October, and the overall economy grew for the 126th consecutive month. Anyway, the report was issued by Timothy Flore, I suppose, chair there. The October PMI at 48.3, an increase of 0.5 from September's reading of 47.8. The new index in orders registered at 49.1, an increase of 1.8% from the September reading of 47.3. The production index registered at 46.2, down 1.1% compared with September's reading of 47.3. Backlog of work registered at 44.1, down 1% compared with September. The employment index registered 47.7, a 1.4% increase from September's reading of 46.3. The supply delivery index registered at 49.5, a 1.6% decrease from September's 51.1. Most of these indexed 50 is the break-even point. Inventory index registered at 48.9, an increase of 2% from September's 46.9. Price index registered 45.5, 4.2% decrease there from the September reading of 47.7. The new export order index registered at 50.4, a 9.4 percentage increase from September's 41. The import index at 45.3, a 2.8 decrease there. Comments from the panel reflect improvements from prior month, but sentiments remain cautious. We already talked about that. The demand contrasted with new order index contrasting marginally. The customer inventory index moved into about the right territory. Backlog of work contrasted the sixth straight month. The new export order index surged into expansion territory, likely contributed to a slowing contraction of new order index. Consumption measured by production employment contrasted due to a lack of demand, but contributed positively. A combination of a plus 0.3 percentage points to PMI. Calculation inputs expressed as suppliers' delivery inventories were again lower in October. Food and beverage remain a strong industry. It same had happened with China. Transportation equipment, the weakest sector. Overall, sentiment system have remained cautious near-term growth of the 18 manufacturing industries. 5 reported growth in October. Furniture and related products, printing and related support activities, food and beverages, that's the same thing the government mentioned, and tobacco products, food, wood product, computer electronics products. The 12 units reporting contraction were primary metals, apparel, allied products, textile mills, transportation equipment, plastics, rubber products, machinery, fabricated metal products, and paper products. Surprisingly, consumer demand is down. We're expecting very soft Q4 without much relief in sight for Q1. Q1's a very tricky quarter at best, and that's in computer and electronic equipment. The chemical manufacturing industry is depressed. The automobile sales continue to decrease. However, trucks and SUVs are still providing decent revenue. The economy is showing signs of weakening. The same business headwinds on trade, tariffs, and currency uncertainty are making environmental changes. You could have some relief on the tariff thing, but will that make any difference? Psychologically, yes, but in the worldwide economy, no. Automobile-related manufacturing is definitely slowing in the U.S. I think we're seeing a negative impact of the tariff wars and the unsigned trade agreement with Mexico and Canada. Let's see. Our business level is softened on the 3 months. U.S. market and globally, Germany and China are experiencing similar slowdowns, and we've talked about that. And the PMI rate of change slower, contrasting there. Where you went over these, we won't go back over them again. And commodity prices are up. Nickel, resin, and steel, and whatever. Stainless commodity prices are down. Caustic soda, copper, steel, carbon steel, hot rolled steel. That really hurts manufacturing. And commodities in short supply, electrical components, helium. I think that was in the last one we also looked at here. And again, the high in the last 12 months was 58.8, the low 47.8. New orders registered at 41.1 in October, an increase of 1.8 tenths. So new order index above 52.5 is generally consistent with an increase in the Census Bureau series on manufacturing in a constant $2,000 is where we're looking to here. I think we looked at the production index registered at 46.2 in October, 11 point lower there, and we mentioned who these people are. Employment at 47.7, an increase of 1.4 when compared to September reading of 46.3. We mentioned those industries. Supply delivery, we've already talked about those. And inventories at 48.9 in October, an increase of 2%. Ouch. 7 reporting higher inventories in October are non-metallic mineral products, wood products, tobacco products. I won't name all. Transportation 11 reporting decreased. Appliances and components, paper products, etc. decreased there. Customer inventories registered at 47.8, which is 2.3% higher. This is the highest customer inventory level since July, when the index registered 48. That's what Flores said there. 5 Minutes reporting customer inventory as too high during the month of October. And primary metals, furniture related products. Low was wood products. Expect the prices to go up. Computer, electronics there. And we'll attach this particular one. Imports, we hadn't looked at it, at 45.3, in October, 2 percentage points lower than compared to 48.1. 12 Minutes reporting a decrease, again, electronic equipment and appliances and components. That doesn't look good there. Buying policies, capital expenditure decreased by 2 days in October to 146 days. Haven't looked at that index here. Average lead time for production materials was unchanged in October, 63 days. So their index is a little bit different here, and that reflects that. So basically, in terms of the market had a pretty good week, basically speaking. If you look at the market numbers, they are there, but just remember, the market operates on the psychology of the economy. And if you even take modest numbers, which most of these numbers I've given you were modest numbers, trade them as not perhaps spectacular, but good. The market looks up, and if you're gauging that, people look at their 501ks, 401ks, and they see some improvement. Therefore, they think the economy is humming along. But on the level where jobs are, that has slowed, and of course that'll depend on what sector you're in. We'll have to take a look at the latest beige book to see where that is. But the basic trend, and if you go to the HSI market PMIs, you'll get moderate growth, and Europe is definitely slowing. Germany is slowing. The hands people there. The economies across the EU, uncertainty, of course, in the UK with Brexit, and that uncertainty will be around. Now we have an election in December, more uncertainty in the UK. That economy is out. Fog has got Delhi, and that impacts the Indian economy, which is already impacted. China is about 6% there. They have slowed things down a bit. And the only bright spots, or some of the bright spots, are some of the emerging economies. We'll look for their next PCIs and see where they are in terms of those economies, if they are still managing to grow. The forecast, of course, for next year is things will be basically slower, and that's what we have. Nonetheless, that will do it for us. For those in business, make next week a productive one. For consumer, the eye is on the prize. The holiday season has started. Buying season, we'll be looking at it to see how people are actually buying. Are they buying in Q4 to take care of Q1? We've seen that movie played out before. So that's why Q1 is a very interesting one to be there. Interest rates, the mortgage interest rates are down. And, I've got to do the numbers. Sorry about that. I'm rushing around here a little too fast here. And forgetting some of my basic work here. Let's do the numbers here. This is from the BBC. We'll start with the FTSE. It is at a positive 0.7%, or 54.4% for the FTSE in the UK. In Amsterdam, they were at 4.15%. In Paris, at 32.03. And the DAC was at 94.26. And the Eurostasi at 19.3. And in Madrid, they were at 70.5. Let's slip to Asia very quickly here. In Bombay, they were at 154.69. 45, and the Nikkei was down a negative 76 to 7. And let me jump back to the U.S. here. The Dow up 301.31, and the Nasdaq at 94.04, and the S&P 500 at 29.35. We'll look briefly at Brent crude futures. Where are they? Down 36 cents. Brent crude at $61.33. West Texas was at $55.90. T-Boone Pickens heirs were jumping for joy. Gold was up $3.45 at $1,509.85 on the Forex. So that does it there. And let me just go to CBC, and we got the Nikkei in Shanghai. They were at 17.25. They were up. The HIS was at 385.14. The AZAC 2000 was at 117.8. The Kopei, that is Korea, at 30.4. So those are some of the markets we didn't have here. We try to get them all in. If we can get them in. We don't have those volumes. Anyway, I'll see if I can snatch it up from Reuters. Prices had fallen, but now, well, they have fallen. I suppose you'd say that, yes. This is from Reuters. I'm not certain. I don't have the Russell 2000. I always like, that's a small cap, so we don't have that. So what we don't have, we just don't have. And maybe we'll just bid on. Won't be the first time that has happened to us. Incidentally, Saudi Arabia is setting its national oil company, Aramco, out there, which is valued at trillions of dollars. They'll offer about 2% of it on the Saudi Arabian market. So we'll see how that plays out, doesn't play out, which direction that will go in. But we'll see. And that is a few months ahead. Anyway, that will do it for us. Sorry about not having the market news up there. If you found out something you didn't know, very good indeed.